Hello, class. This section is on more about blocks and variable scope. Okay. It says the scope of a variable is limited to the block in which it is defined. Okay. Remember earlier we talked about scopes of variables, or you have different functions. If a variable is defined within a function, that is the scope of that variable. But it can get a little more defined when we deal with our curly braces and where we declare our variables, etc. So it tells us that C++ allows you to create variables almost anywhere in the program. Okay, and in this next program, in program 4-28, all right, it is a modification of program 4-17, which was the program we kind of looked at earlier. It determines if a user qualifies for a loan. The definition of the variables income and years have been moved to later points in the program. So if we look at this program here, remember we had to input the income, or well, not say input it because we did input it, but we declared all of our variables at the beginning of the main function. But if we look at this function here, the main function here, we actually introduced income right before we did our CN. And then here we introduce year right before we see in the year. Okay, so it tells us that it is a common practice to define all of the functions variables at the top of the function. Commonly that's what we do. Sometimes, especially in larger programs, it's a good idea to define variables near the part of the program where they are used. But like I say, this comes into user preference, your programming style. And then too, once you get a job, the company that you work for may have rules as to how they want their programs written, where variables should be created or declared and whatnot. Okay, this makes the purpose when you define them or declare them where you're using them. It makes the purpose of the variable more evident. Okay, so space. And your if we look down at the this paragraph, it says in program 4-28, the scope of the income variable is the part of the program. It's part of the program in lines 13 through 32. All right, and it says that the scope, all right, of the years variable is the part of the program in lines 19 through 32. All right, so if we go back and look here, 13, this is where income is introduced. So its scope starts here and it ends here. So what that means is for income, if I try to make mention of income or try to assign a value to income uh, anywhere above line 13, I would get an error. Okay. For year, its scope is 19 through 32. If I try to make mention of year anywhere above 19, all right, I would get an error because it's being introduced at this point, and from here on, I could use it in my program, and the computer knows it. So that would be its scope. So that's all they're talking about, the scope of where the program is validly that can be used in a valid manner. Okay, so it tells us that the variable income and years are defined inside functions main brackets or braces. All right, so within the main braces, so it would be local to the main function. All right, remember we talk about local variables and global variables. Anything within the curly braces of the main function, they would be variables that are local to the main function. All right, and it says that variables defined inside a set of braces have local scope or block scope. All right. They may only be used in the part of the program between their definition and the blocks closing curly braces. All right, so from where it's being defined on to where the curly closed curly braces. So we go back to here. So we see that income is introduced here. This is saying double income. So from this point to the closed curly braces, I can use income. Income has been introduced, so now I can use that variable, okay, in my program. All right. So that's all that was saying. Okay. It tells us that you may define variables inside any block. Okay. For example, let's look at 4.4-29. This version of the loan program has the variables year defined inside the block of the if statement. All right. The scope of years is part of the programs in lines 21 through 31. So, given the same program, okay, we introduce the income here. So it still have a scope all the way down to 38 now. But if we look here, we have if statement here, and we have an open curly brace. All right, we have an if statement here, but then we else statement here. Then we have a closed curly brace. So what it's saying is, from this point, from 13, this is the scope of year. Year goes from 21 through 31. All right, because these are the closed braces. So there's nothing here. All right, so I can use year anywhere in between 21 and 31. All right, so like I say, and we'll look at a program in a minute to see what we mean by that, because in years, being that we put it inside this particular scope, all right, this is a new scope. It can only be used inside of here now. All right. So outside of here, I would have to create a year variable. Okay. All right. So that's basically what that is saying. All right. So now it says, notice the scope of year is only within the block where it is defined, which is in that if logic. All right. The variable is not visible before its definition or after the closing braces of the block. All right. All right. This is true for any variable defined inside a set of braces. All right. The note is, when a program is running, it enters the section of code that constitutes a variable scope. It is said that the variable comes into scope. Right? This simply means that variables is not that this means the variable is now visible and the program may reference it. Likewise, when a variable leaves scope, it may no longer be used. All right. So that's all it's saying. Once we leave out of this scope of this if, we cannot use years anymore. So that's all it's saying. Once we leave the scope, years can't be used outside of this. All right. So now, variables with the same name. So what that means, what this section is going to talk about is, based upon this, if we have a variable and it's only defined within that scope, then when we move to another scope, then we can use the same variable name and we won't get any errors. Right? So variables with the same name. When a block is nested inside another block, a variable defined in the inner block may have the same name as the variable defined in the outer block, as long as the variable in the inner block is visible. All right. However, the variable in the outer block will be hidden. All right. And what that means is, whatever you do to variable with the same name in the inner block, it will not affect the value of the variable with the same name in the outer block, right? So let's look at this program, all right? This program, it says that, I'm looking at the comment, this program uses two variables with the same name, all right? So what happens is you got your pound include, you got your user namespace, all right? Then you got int main, all right? Then you got int number. So now this is the variable being introduced. Now the scope is what? Inside of the main. But then we say cout enter a number greater than 0. So we would enter a number. Now we have an if statement here that says what? If number is greater than 0. So if we entered a number here that was greater than 0, it will fall into this if logic here. But notice we got new curly braces, and then we got int number. But we have also what? Int number at this point. But this one is in a different scope. Remember we talked about the outer scope and the inner scope. So given that this is an inner scope, I can use the same variable name, all right, int number, and then it says now enter another number, and I could input a number, and then once I input that number, I could output that number, and then exit out of my if logic, and then if I output number again, which I'm in the outer block, it will output the value that num was given when what was first inputted. Okay, so let's look at this. It says in this program, it says enter a number greater than 0. So here they entered the number 2. Then it went to here. Okay, if 2 is greater than 0, 2 is greater than 0. Then it declared what? Number to be of integer, the same variable. Then it said cout enter another number, all right? So this time they see in a 7. They inputted 7 for number, all right? So it says cout, the second number you entered was, and then it outputted 7. But then when it broke out, when it got out of the if logic, which was the body, the block or the scope for the inner number, all right? When it got out of that, then it said your first number was, and we outputted number again, and it outputted what was previously inputted, which was the number 2. So let's look at a program that does that. So let's take this program and we'll take this out. All right. We could leave the functions in there, but I'll just take all this out. I'll take all this out. I could take all this out. All right. I'll take this out. All right, I'll take this out and just have number. Well, I wouldn't do it here because remember this global. All right. All right. So here we have this and what? Return 0. All right. So we have return 0. So now I could do like they did. I'll say int number. All right. So this is in the main. All right. So I'll do cout enter number. All right. I'll just say enter number. I could say first number. All right, enter first number. And then I'll do cn number. All right. But now I won't input number again because what I'm going to do, I'll say, yeah, okay. I don't have to worry about the if greater than 0. All right. And then we'll say if number is greater than 10. All right, they did greater than 0. It don't matter what it is, what your condition is. If it's greater than that, all right. So what I can do is now I have a different scope. All right. So if we look here, this is our outer scope. Okay, and number is can be used in that scope. But then if I do this int number, all right, I've just created a variable with the same name, but in a new scope, as in the scope of the if logic. All right, then I can say cout okay, and then I can say, well, I'll do the slash, whatever, just so we can have space. All right, so enter the second number, all right? And I could even do some calculations to that number. I could say, well, let's say CN number, all right? And I'll just leave it at this, like this for now, all right? CN number. Now I could say cout and this would be the second number, right? Second number entered. Okay. And then once I break out of the if logic, all right, now I'm back in the scope of what? The main. And now here I could say cout I don't need that many. I'll just do it that way. All right. Cout okay, first number entered. All right, so now we have this. So if I run it, all right, and all I need to do is put, oh, let's see, CN, I must have missed the semicolon. Yep, semicolon. So run it. All right, so it says what? Enter first number. So the first number I entered, I'm gonna put 100, okay? Enter second number. Say I put 500, okay? See? Second number, output it was 500. The next one was 100. So look what happens. Let me scroll down far enough where you can see. Enter first number here. I entered 100. Then we went into this as logic. If number is greater than 10, okay, we created another a variable of the same name called number. And then we say enter second number and we what? CN number. All right. So we didn't use another variable name, same variable name, CN number, CN number. And so this time we entered the 500. So we entered 500. Then we said, before we left out of the block, we said cout second number entered and we outputted number. And we got 500. But then once we outputted this statement here, it left the if logic, all right, that inner block, and now we're in the outer block again. And what? The program remembers what? The value of number, and it outputs number in the outer block, which is 100. Okay, so that's all it's saying. And like I say, depending on how large your program is and how many different, like I say, blocks of like say if logic, while logic, or whatever, you can use the same variable name, but you got to be careful when you do that because sometimes you can run into issues trying to change something and you're changing the wrong variable. Okay, so but you can do it. It can be done if you're not in the same body. All right. So, and then what it says is program, which is the one we was looking at. Okay, let's say program 4-30 has two separate variables named number, which was what we did also. The CIN and COUT statements in the inner block, beginning with the if statement, can only work with the number variable defined in that block. As soon as the program leaves that block, which was the if logic, the inner number goes out of the scope, all right, revealing the outer number variable. Okay, so that's what happens. So it's a warning, although it's perfectly acceptable to define variables inside nested blocks, you should avoid giving them the same name as variables in the inner block. Okay, it's too easy to confuse one variable with another. So even though it's legal to do it in the encoding, you might want to stay away from it because, like I say, you're gonna, unless you're writing that type code and you're writing it to kind of keep people from trying to modify your code easily. But like I say, you got to watch. All right, so this ends this session.